Okay, let's take a look at block elements versus inline elements. So far, we've been working with mostly block elements. Now, a block element is if I right-click and inspect, you can see that it takes up the entire width of my page. Even though it's actually only using, 30% of the text, it's actually saying, allocate the entire width of the page for this particular H2 element. Paragraphs are block elements as well. H3s, H4, 5, 6, even the H1 at the very top of the page. But what isn't is if we go down here, we have this particular paragraph with nested elements. Now the nesting has nothing to do with it. What's important to note is that this B element for bold, it's not taking up the entire width of the entire page. It's actually sitting side by side with your regular text. And then we have italics, regular text, underline, and then some more regular text. Now underline, italic, and bold, these are called inline elements. And all that means is they can exist side by side with other elements. Whereas paragraph, you can see that I only have text up until about here. If I hover over this, to the right of where I selected that text, it's still taking up that extra space. That's a block element. Now you do not need to have inline elements inside of a block element, though typically that is what you're going to end up doing, but there's no rule for that. It's just, this is an inline element, and we could put italics right beside bold, right beside underline. It doesn't really matter because it's an inline element. So it's going to take up the least amount of space possible. Versus block elements, like down here, this div is a block element, this div is a block element, and it's going to take up the entire width. Now, a couple use cases is, bold, italic, and underline, but also, if you wanted a block element, you could use a title, like an H1 through H6, and that's going to put your larger text on its own line. And so what's nice about that is we already have a title here, Welcome to HTML 101. We've got a subtitle here using an H2 element, and then we have a couple of paragraphs. These are all block elements, and this is what's making our page look nice. Now, if, for some reason, this bold were a block element, and I'm going to show you what this is going to look like, but don't try this. I don't want you to try this because this is breaking out of the scope of HTML, but I'm going to show you what this looks like. Display block. So what I just wrote there, you don't need to try. But I changed it. I hijacked its default behavior to be block instead of inline. And you can see that bold is now on its own line. And this is why inline elements are very important, because if you have bold on its own line, you'll never actually have the ability to select a particular piece of text in a paragraph and make it bold, underline, or italic. Now, there are a lot of different elements out there that are inline, and there's a lot of them that are block. And so you're going to have to sort of discover these as you move through learning HTML. There's too many elements to possibly cover. There's probably hundreds of them. But for the most part, you're going to use a handful of them pretty much every single day. And you need to know the difference between a block element, like this one that I hijacked, or an inline element, so that you can actually make your text presentable in a human readable manner. So that's the difference between block elements and inline elements.